Hey everyone, Derek here to answer your questions about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and the Future Connected Epilogue, and we have a lot. I put out the call on my personal Twitter, and a lot of people responded having a bunch of questions about the game, and I pulled out 60 of them, so we have a lot to get through. So let's just jump right into things, and we start with Positive Link, who asked, how competent is the AI for the characters? And from everything I can tell, it's exactly the same as they were before. I have not messed around too much with not playing Melia and having her in my team because Melia was kind of known for not being well controlled by the computer. I haven't tried it out yet, but it is pretty notable that when you start up Future Connected, Melia is the one that you're in control of. So it seems that most of the AI is the same as it was before. So don't expect any major changes on that front. Next up we have Charlie, who asks, I feel like this might have been answered already, but has Colony 6 reconstruction been made easier thanks to the tracking, or is it still the same? As much as the tracking for quests has been improved, unfortunately Colony 6 has not been made any easier. There's no extra tracking for it. You can't say, oh, we need this item for reconstruction. Let's find exactly where it's at. No, it's exactly the same as it was in the original game. So unfortunately that's not going to go any quicker. Fortunately, there's a bunch of material out there telling you exactly where to find the materials that you need. So it shouldn't be that hard. It's just a matter of tracking down where they're at and getting it done. Next up is Jarostin, who wants to know, is the game easy for newcomers to get into? And I'd like to say yes. It's maybe a little overwhelming at first. There's a lot of systems that they put out there and you're trying to figure them out, but once you get your head wrapped around it, it's not too bad, especially if you've already played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where that system is a lot more complex, there's a lot more moving parts involved, and there's not as much managed to hear. Basically, you're just setting a combat bar and arts bar, as it were, and setting what kind of moves you want your characters to use, and it's the effectiveness of them are tied into other characters or your positioning in relation to the monster itself. It's pretty well explained in the game and not too hard to get your head wrapped around things once you start getting into the flow. So I think it might take a little work, but it's not too hard for newcomers to get into. Next up is Matthew Hunt, who asks, are there any references to Xenoblade Chronicles 2? As far as I've seen so far in the time I've been allowed to talk about, no, there has not been a single reference to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The closest you'll get is the change on Alvis, who now has a different item rather than the key around his neck, and that is about as close as you'll get to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but that's also been mentioned by a lot of fans up to that point once they showed Alvis in the trailer. Even if there was, though, it's likely going to come much later on, especially with the epilogue, and I've only played the first 4 hours because, well, that's all I can really talk about. Next up is Sybil, where they ask, did Charlotte get any buffs? Unfortunately, just like the Colony 6 question and the AI question, hasn't really been changed. Charlotte works exactly the same she did in the base game, so no changes there. Base Forever wants to know, how are the load times compared to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when warping to a new area? And the load times are great. I honestly didn't even think about it. I just knew I picked an item to place to warp to. It happened and I was already on the move. It didn't feel like it took a long amount of time. So the load times feel pretty good. Next we have Zilla, who wants to know, are there any ways to change characters before a boss battle after a cutscene plays? Xenoblade 2 didn't have that feature. There is. This actually was in the original game as well, where on occasion after a cutscene or before a boss, they'll bring up like, hey, here's your current party. Do you want to change anything up about them? And you can do that. It doesn't happen all the time, but there are points where you can make those changes and get a character involved or do whatever you want with them in order to have the party that you want for that. Not always, though. So for the most part, you'll want to be kind of ready, but there are ways to kind of support yourself if that is the case. Next up is Kampira Fafin, who says, I know the Future Connected is separated from the main game. However, if we finish the main game, is there anything that transfers over to Future Connected? Or is Future Connected completely standalone in terms of leveling and gear? Future Connected is mostly standalone and nothing is connected in terms of leveling in the gear. You'll start out with a completely different level than what you had in the original game. You'll always start Future Connected at level 60. and need to collect brand new gear to bring over. The only difference is cosmetic, where anything that you've collected in the main game will transfer over to that. So if you want Shulk wearing his original outfit or one of the other outfits that he has in the main game, you can have him wear that throughout all of Future Connected, and that's the same for Melia. But that's really all that transfers over to Future Connected, at least that I've seen so far, and I don't think it's going to change too much. I think that's pretty much it. It's kind of its own standalone thing. I kind of compare it to DLC that isn't DLC, so there you go. Next up is Carmen, who wants to know, how much does the main story playthrough of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition affect Future Connected, if there's any to begin with? In other words, does ability upgrades, abilities in generals, or other like-minded mechanics carry over from one to the other? And as I said before, no, it really doesn't affect anything. It just shows what happened at the end of the original Xenoblade. Has all the cutscenes that you'll see throughout Definitive Edition, and starts up with this new storyline. So it is highly recommended that you finish the original game if you've not played it before jumping into Future Connected, because there are a lot of spoilers and a lot of twists discussed in a very casual manner. So be prepared for that, but otherwise it is its own thing that you just jump into and take care of. The big difference, of course, is that you're at level 60 and you have most of your abilities unlocked, and you're not really learning any new abilities, but you can upgrade how useful they are thanks to the same art books and whatnot. So there's a bit to level up and change and configure as you go into it, but nothing too major. Matthew Dumatal wants to know, for fashion gear, do you need to have the equipment in your inventory in order to use them? Or is it like a registration thing where once you have first obtained the equipment, it's already available to use for fashion gear without it even in your inventory? Hope that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Basically, once you get an item, is it always unlocked in the gear? And I have not checked this specifically. I do know I accidentally sold something and I didn't notice any option disappear from the cosmetics menu after I sold that piece of item. Of course, I could have had it in another form with slots or as a unique item. I don't know for sure, but my guess is that once it's in your inventory, it's sort of registered and you can play with it through there. I mean, it kind of makes sense that way, especially as those items do carry over into Future Connected and you can have access to those as well. So I think you only need to register it, especially because there is a somewhat limited inventory in Xenoblade Chronicles. A lot of it, but it's still limited. Next up we have Bob Gray, who says, I would love to know for somebody who has only played the second one what to expect with going back and trying out the first one. Am I going to be disappointed because the second one improved on a lot of things from the first? I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. There's a lot of things quest-wise that was taken from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and implemented into Xenoblade Chronicles. Most notably the quest tracking. It's a lot more simple. It's very familiar. The big difference that you're going to find is the battle system, which is quite different from 2. But the storyline, the characters, they're all great, and some would argue even before this definitive edition came out that it's still better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It's more of a pick your poison type of thing, but I think you will enjoy going back and playing this original game. Next up is Violet and Friends, who says, how do skill trees work this time? Does SP still get automatically put into the current skill tree, or do you get to spend it as you like? It is exactly like the original game. You do not get to place SP wherever you want. You pick a skill tree that you want to be in. They'll earn SP for that automatically, and you'll want to change it if you want to go into any others. So it's exactly like the original game. Ozone Sparkles asks, how does it look compared to Xenoblade 2? That game looked great at some point, but really ugly at others. Thanks. I think it looks comparable. I think it looks really good. I haven't seen any major blemishes or anything that stands out as like, I don't know about this. For the most part, it all looks good, and I haven't seen the entire game, but I've gone through Magna Forest, I've gone through the Aerith Sea, and not really seen any major dips of quality. So I think overall it's a pretty solid showing. Matthew Dowden wants to know, have the precious jumping physics been changed? I think they've been tweaked very, very slightly, mostly in the fact that how the animation looks. It's very similar, it's almost exact, but there is a bit more of a natural feeling to Shulk's jump, most notably. Otherwise, the jumping physics are pretty much alike. I didn't notice a huge jump, but I think it's more smoothing out the animation overall. Nothing too major though. Jonathan Stead wants to know, does it handle unique monsters better? I seem to remember if you killed one in the original game, it was random if it respawned or not, whereas 2 had a tombstone. I saw this question quite a lot. People wanted to know if the tombstones from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are in the original, and unfortunately, no, there are no tombstones in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. It works exactly as it did in the original game. So, sorry about that. Dohi Wario says, assuming we've played through the original game, is there any issue jumping right into Future Connected story-wise? Yeah, if you've already beaten the original game and still remember all the plot points, all the major ones, you can pretty much jump right into Future Connected, have no issues whatsoever. It has that little recap cutscene to get you on board with things, but you can just jump right into this if you're very familiar with the original Xenoblade. Nintendo City says, do the new additions add to the original? Does anything feel like unnecessary fluff? I think the additions do add to the original, especially in terms of quest tracking. That makes it actually a lot leaner because you're not running around trying to find this item in order to fulfill a quest. It was just like random to find. Now you can get pointed exactly where you need to go, and I actually cut off a lot of time that I would have spent otherwise. I think I came in well under 3-4 hours for doing most of the stuff in Colony 9 when you first start there to working your way toward Gower Plains and beyond. So I think it makes the pace a little bit better in that case, and nothing added really feels unnecessary so far. It all feels pretty great, and yeah, I have no complaints as far as that as far as those additions. Justin wants to know, do you think some of the colors are too bright? Like Shulk's hair is too yellow. It looks like he dyed it yellow. It is a bit brighter, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because everything was kind of muted before. This time the colors pop and really give a vibrancy to this world that the original didn't quite have. You got it sometimes, but it really does pop in Definitive Edition. And I got used to Shulk's much more yellow hairstyle pretty quickly. And yeah, I think it all kind of works. I was more shocked about how Ryan wasn't quite as much of a redhead anymore, but it kind of depends on the lighting and how it hits him. You can sort of see the red in his hair now and then. But overall, the color palette didn't really bother me at all. Fernando GM wants to know, has the max number of chests in the map changed? In the original, you could leave, I think, 10 chests from enemies in a map at the same time, and then the 11th chest to appear would replace the first, and so on. I have not personally checked this, but I usually get the chest as soon as I can. I've had 4 or 5 on the screen at once, just from fighting a lot of enemies, but overall, if I had to wager a guess, it's probably exactly the same, because unless they updated something as far as quest, they make it very obvious. Otherwise, everything is pretty similar, or if not exactly the same as it was in the original game. Game Maniac wants to know, did you find that they may have made certain tedious quests easier to do, such as giving you a new way to get rarer items or making weather change more often? A big issue with the original was how many quests were based on chance. So there's no option to change the weather, and I don't know if it happened more often. I know there was one weather-specific quest I had to do, and I was waiting on and doing everything else while waiting for that to come up. Now, the big advantage to that is with the quest tracking, where I can choose that weather quest to be my main quest, the one that tracks with it. But if it's not actually around, it'll say the subject's not there or something like that. And once you do have them on the map, once that specific weather happens, it'll pop up and you'll start seeing the dotted line leading to them as long as you're in the same area. So it makes it a little easier, but you're not going to find a way to get it much quicker. As far as rarer items, well, if a quest tells you that you need a rare item, it'll actually show you much in the same way to have that dotted line to those specific ones if you set that as your quest tracker. However, I still ran into an issue with one of the more notorious Frontier Village quests, where it'll tell you that you have 2 different items that you can get. One is a lot more common, the other one is not, and it's very possible that you already have enough of the one item so you get locked into that choice, and that's what happened to me. So even though I could have used that to find the rarer items and have no issues, because I already fulfilled the one side, I was locked into it. So that aspect is still there and still kind of a pain. So you gotta have to be aware of that kind of thing. Otherwise though, quest tracking really does make this a lot easier. John Despa wants to know, can you do a 30-second video capture via capture button, something that can't be done on Xenoblade Chronicles 2? I tested this out before the recording this, and yes, you can record 30-second videos in this game, so that's really nice. Rosa Kilmer wants to know, is the gallery mode from the new 3DS version back? I'd love to be able to go through and listen to the new remastered songs without all the noises. Unfortunately, there is no gallery mode to listen to the songs, so it's just a feature that got cut, I'm afraid. Arctray wants to know, haven't had time to check the preview, but if it wasn't answered there, are heart-to-hearts fully voiced this time like they were in Xenoblade Chronicles 2? Unfortunately, no. All the heart-to-hearts in Definitive Edition are just the same. There's no new dialogue in the base game. Any new voice acting you'll hear is going to be in Future Connected. So, but that also has a much more pared down cast. So all they have to worry about is Shulk, Melia, and the new party members for those voices, or new characters in general in Future Connected. But yeah, the heart-to-hearts aren't actually voiced this time. Still. Rob wants to know, not a deal breaker either way, but now that the character models have actual mouths, is there lip syncing or not? I've not noticed any major lip syncing fallacies. Like they seem to match up pretty well. I don't know if it's 1-to-1 or anything like that, but they match pretty well with the original dialogue, and I've had no issue. I think they might have found a way to make it work, and yeah, I've had no issues in that way. Hurricane Howan wants to know, any changes to the base game that could be considered a negative change? The only one I can think of as far as a negative change actually is related to the quest tracking, where it's if you enjoyed the aspect of being able to just run around this giant world, exploring everywhere and just getting lost in it, that's kind of gone thanks to this new quest tracking, where it takes you exactly where you need to go. It doesn't feel as, I guess, adventurous this time around, because you have an idea of where you need to go, what you need to do. That's overall, though, I don't think a bad thing, but it is something I kind of had in the back of my mind. But the further I get, the more complex quests that get put out there, and all the random items and how you're spread all over the place, it really didn't become a concern by even this point. Joe wants to know, how many hours is Future Connected? That I can't say for sure. I've not finished it myself. I've only played about 4 hours so far, but that was enough time to do quite a few quests, gather up a lot of the Pawn Specters, and really feel like I explored a good chunk of the Bionis shoulder at this point. There's still more that's kind of blocked off at the moment that I can't get to, so I don't know how long it'll take to actually open that stuff up, or how much you run around back and forth around the Bionis shoulder in order to, do all the story stuff. But if I had to guess, it's probably going to be anywhere between 15 and 20 hours. I don't think it's going to be that long of a segment, but I mean, who knows? Maybe the story makes up for that and really allows for something special. Again, I've only played 4 hours, and most of that was spent with side quests, exploring, and what have you. Not too much plot-wise. Matthew Dumatal wants to know, are you able to turn autosave off? Unfortunately, no. I looked through the options and there was no option to turn the autosave off, but you do still have save slots, so you're all good there. Osvaldo Topete wants to know, can you transfer data from the 3DS port to this one? Like, if doing so, you get bonus content. No, there is no transfer data from the 3DS port to this one. You really can't do anything as far as that, or bring over save data. Nothing really in terms of that. However, there is bonus content. If you have a save file from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, you'll actually get 100,000 gold to start the game with. You can choose not to take it if you want, but if you played before, you can get that little bonus and give you a little bit more options to get yourself started when you play the game. It doesn't help a ton. I've already blown through all that money way early in, so I don't know if it helps that much, but it was a nice boost in the beginning. Treyward wants to know, you mentioned in your discussion about Future Connected that mining cuts out the middleman and immediately gives you the gems. Is this true of the main game as well? No, you still have to do exactly what you did before in Xenoblade Chronicles. You have to mine the ore, you get the different crystals. You can then forge those crystals at the forge to make the gems and get what you want. But the big difference here is that with that method in the main game, you could easily pick what gems you wanted based on what you had. So if you really wanted agility up, you could focus on that. You wanted more defense, you could focus on that. Stuff like, those examples. However, when it comes to Future Connected, you might be able to easily get these gems, but you don't really decide what they are. You'll get gems based on those colors, so yellow crystals will give you yellow gems and so forth. So you can kind of get close to what you want, but not exactly. So unique equipment is actually pretty useful this time around because I found a bunch that was just all strengths up for my more tanky characters. So that was really nice. So it just sort of changes up the feeling of how you go about all that. Just Some Guy says, are there any major gameplay changes to the base game, or is it nearly identical to the original? And yeah, as far as gameplay outside of quest lines and stuff like that, it is pretty much identical. They left it just as is. This is a graphical upgrade with improved quests, improved menus, improved maps. Basically, that's it. Gameplay-wise, combat-wise, it is pretty much the same. Wild Fox says, I have potentially the most important question here. Are the ice physics back? Unfortunately, I cannot answer this because I can only talk up into the first visit to Prison Island, and I can't talk about anything beyond that. So I haven't even reached that area that you're asking about. But based on everything I've played so far, I'm going to guess that the ice physics are pretty similar, if not exactly the same as they were before. Next up is Adam, who says, after having beaten the game, I heard that agility was actually a broken stat, since it controlled accuracy and evasion for your characters. Do you know if the stat is still broken in that way? Oh, yes, it is. I've been loading up Shulk with agility, and same with Dunban, and yeah, they're still doing just as well as before, having no problems with that. So agility is definitely the stat you want to go for those characters, and it really does just make a difference. You can really lay into enemies because of that. Next up is D, who wants to know, can you turn off the Vision Reacts music that plays over any battle theme after you break a Vision tag? It was really intrusive during some fights, especially when it would override You Would Know Our Names. As far as I can tell, there is no way to turn off that specific music. You can lower the volume of certain things, but I think if you turn off like all the sound effects, you're not going to hear anything, not even just Vision Reacts. But that would allow you to just hear the music, so you don't have any sound effects getting in the way. So you kind of have to make a choice of how much that affects you or annoys you. Not sure how that all goes, but that's about the best I can answer. Smash Mario Pro 2000 says, outside of the Future Connected, is there any new cutscenes they added to the game? Did they just rip the voice from the original, or did they re-record any lines? Yeah, as before, there's no new cutscenes or anything like that within the main game, and all the voice lines are exactly the same as they were in the original. Maybe touched up a little bit so they sound a little bit better compared to the original, but overall, it is exactly the same as before. Jerome Vanderbilge, I'm going to go Bilge, sorry about that. Have you seen anything that has been cut from the original game? No, the only thing that was cut from the original game that I'm aware of is the Bionis' shoulder, which of course is the new setting for Future Connected. I'm not aware of anything else that's been cut, but I think if there was anything that's been restored, it's likely something they would have touted. So I'm going to guess probably not. Mary C127 wants to know, how many save files do you get in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition? 3 like in the original, or just 1 like Xenoblade 2? Or are you guys not allowed to talk about that yet? I believe we can talk about it, and yes, you do get 3 save files just like in the original, plus the autosave file. So yeah, no issues there, all the same. David Mott says, I doubt it, but is there amiibo support? Nope, no amiibo support whatsoever. Turret 100 says, are there any new heart-to-hearts? No, there's no new heart-to-hearts in Definitive Edition, so nothing there. I mean, this is basically the same game. Chugga Ludroy says, is the enemy pop-in better, specifically Machna Forest? Yes. I did not have any issue with enemies just sort of popping out of nowhere. They are definitely there. I maybe had one instance where I teleported somewhere and there are enemies nearby. I could see them, but they didn't actually show up. But that was like the only example of that really happening. For the most part, as you're walking through, you can see enemies from a good distance, and it never really felt like an issue. Supreme Kai wants to know, pretty general question, is the combat fun? Is Xenoblade 2 better since it's technically the new one of the two? Combat is fun. I really enjoy it, and I can't say which one is better or worse because they are completely different. There's some similarities between the two, but for the most part, they've changed up the battle systems pretty significantly between 1 and 2. So it's more of a matter of perspective. I find both of them fun in their own ways. Xenoblade, I think, is a little easier to keep track of in the original, at least the battle flow. You have ideas of what needs to be done. And to kind of build off of this one and go into Deoxys 48's question, which is it newcomer friendly? I kind of already answered this before, but I wanted to bring this into the fray where yes, I think they've made it a little easier for people, especially newcomers, where you have the break, topple, daze mechanic, or you need to hit an enemy from a certain position in order to maximize it, like the backslash. Before you had to sort of guesstimate, like, okay, this is the back, this should work, and you can get that extra damage. Now, there's actually a little exclamation that will pop up when you're in the right spot. So when you need to be on the side of the enemy to get more damage, it'll have a little icon showing, hey, you're on the side, you can hit them, which is really useful for some of the more amorphous enemies that, well, you don't know what the head is or the back is, and you can actually go around and figure out what the best place to hit them is. So it is made just a little bit easier to figure out what to do. Doesn't really change out much, just provides more information so you can make more informed decisions about what kind of arts you use. James Perrott says, please tell me there's a Japanese voice option like with 2. I haven't heard if one has been announced, but it was downloadable at launch for 2. I believe it was in the original as well, and it is here for Definitive Edition. So yeah, if you want to play the entire game in Japanese, that is totally an option. David Majora says, did they fix Melia's AI? The computer was pretty bad at controlling her in the original version. I have not tested that out specifically. My guess is no, because I've not noticed any significant improvement in the AI. They'll set you up most part, but I have had a lot of time not controlling Shulk, and he will still take quite a while to put on enchant so you can actually do damage to the Mechon without having to use the break topple mechanic. So I'm going to guess no, not really. Next up is Ryan Delmore, who asks, which setting is the remastered or original cutscene music tied to, the battle toggle or the field toggle? This I'm not too sure of because, yeah, I didn't think to check that, and it's not exactly easy to check. I've been sticking with remastered the entire time. It's something you just have to mess around with, I guess, with a little bit yourself. But yeah, I'm not sure which one controls it or if it actually can be controlled. Sorry that I can't really answer your question. Soupy wants to know, do the cutscenes have the choppy animation from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 cutscenes? I'm kind of hoping it does. I don't think there's any choppy animation. The most choppy you'll get is stuff that are remnants from the original game, where like you'll see characters walking and they seem to be taking these nice full steps, but they're only going a little bit of a distance. Like they're sort of set on how far they go, and you know that's still very much around. But the animation I think is still looking pretty good. But it's just kind of improved a bit. Caleb Lemonhouse says, in the original, sometimes the controls can be a little stiff. So is it the full 360 degrees from 2 or more stiff and locks into place like the original? No, this is full 360, full camera controls. It's, not an issue whatsoever. I can move it all around. You can move the camera back. You can move it forward. You can change however you want. It is extremely useful, very easy to take care of. Ben Squire wants to know, can Shulk equip the Junk Sword, his weapon at the beginning of the game, as fashion gear after he obtains the Monado? No, Shulk has no fashion gear for his weapon in the game, so he always has the Monado. Zeno wants to know, does Shulk have more base arts or just the same 8 with all the Monado arts? It's the same 8. It's basically the same as the original. No new arts for Shulk. It's all what you've seen before. Jan the Man wants to know, is Ricky the Hero Pawn playable in Future Connected? Nope, he is not around, but his kids are. The two other party members are the two of the kids of Ricky, Nene and Kino. Nene acts like Ryan and Kino acts like Charla, so they're not exactly brand new characters, but they act like the ones you're pretty much familiar with. So, yep. Keel P wants to know, would you recommend finishing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 before playing Future Connected? I haven't finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I have heard some story elements from that game are being worked into the remake. So I can't answer this yet because I'm going to assume anything that might tie into Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would be at the very end of Future Connected. I've only played a little bit. So I can't answer that conclusively, but if I had to guess, it might not be a bad idea. Just because Xenoblade likes to start off simple and easy for the plots, and then they get crazier and crazier as it goes along. So I can imagine the epilogue of this one being Future Connected being pretty similar. So I'd probably still finish 2 at this point, and fortunately you still have time. Smash78 says, Shulk doesn't eat the sandwich still, right? Yep, he still does the sort of kind of munching towards the sandwich, but not really technically eating it. So yeah, it might look better, but the animations are still pretty similar, so you still end up with scenes quite like that. Soulcaster wants to know, did they increase the amount of items you can carry? I like carrying my past gear and not selling any of it, so did they increase the limit? I got pretty far, but I remember eventually having no choice but to sell. As far as I can tell, it is still the same as it was before. There are still only 450 slots for each piece of equipment, so boots, helmets, shirts, pants, what have you, weapons, only 450 each. Meanwhile, crystals have a max of 500, so it's pretty much the same as it was before. Moon Knight Coda says, does Future Connected play like Torna or Xenoblade 2? Also, is there a new game plus? Future Connected does basically plays like the base game, just with a few tweaks here and there. The two big things when it comes to the combat is the fact that there's no access to any visions like in the main game, so you can't see what might be coming and adjust for that. And the chain attacks have been changed to union strikes by the pawn specters that you rescue, and change up some of the strategy there. But otherwise, beyond those elements, it plays exactly as it did in the base game. As far as New Game Plus, I don't know about Future Connected having a New Game Plus, but the main game, of course, still has it from like the original. At least I would assume so, but based on how much everything's very much like the original here. Matt's LP Adventures says, is there still party banter during battle? I saw one preview that had no voices at all during fights, and it was a little jarring. I don't know if there was a way to turn that off in the original because I always had it on. Yes, party banter is still there. You will be hearing about Ryan time, or Ryan asking about anybody see that. All those interactions that you had are still there and repeated. But if you want to turn down like how much they do talk, there is a slider in the options, so you don't hear that battle talk as much. So yeah, basically you turn off the voices for battle, but the cutscenes will still be there. Mabus wants to know, how does Future Connected work? If you complete the game, does your level, items, etc. carry over? And if you go straight into Future Connected from the start, are you at level 1? Again, kind of answered this in the past, but no items carry over other than cosmetic ones. So if you've got any items from the original, the cosmetic versions of those will carry over. And you start at level 60. So there you go. Nathan New Horizons says, how are the options for dialogue looking? I love the voice acting in cutscenes, but the battle cries make me pull my teeth out after a few times. Is Japanese available as well? I kind of answered both of these before, but yes, Japanese is available, and there is an option to lower the volume of in-game voices, so you can get all that taken care of. Next up is Maxim Tomato, who says, you can change the music to the original tracks, right? Is it just one button, or can you change every track individually? So it's split into battle music and field music. So, when you're running around the field, you have the choice of switching between the two, and when you're in battle, you have the choice. So you can have original battle music, but remastered field music, or vice versa. But you can't go through and have each track individually changed in this. Kirby Dat Trickster wants to know, has the Colony 6 restoration changed in any noticeable way? And not really. It's all basically the same. No extra tracking or anything like that. It's all quite there. I think there's a bit more like advice from Juju telling you about what you kind of need, but it doesn't really say like, hey, go here. It's just like, hey, you need this in order to get this, and go from there. So not really any big changes. Alk Spirit says, is it still easy to get over leveled if you do every single side quest as soon as they're available? Yep. I think I've been doing all the side quests and everything like that, and I'm around level 40 as I'm entering the Aerith Sea. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get over leveled if you do all the side quests. You might want to keep that in mind and do all that. So yep. Finally, we have Scruff, who says, gotta ask, is the whole soundtrack being remastered or is it only a few select tracks? I haven't been able to find a concrete answer. The direct mini didn't specify, and the whole soundtrack sounds too good to be true. I think it's the entire soundtrack. I don't think there's any song that didn't get remastered. I haven't noticed any personally, so yeah, I think it's the entire thing. Maybe one or two that didn't, who knows. But overall, yes, all remastered, which is pretty great. And yeah, that covers all the questions about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I know there were a couple in there that people asked me about that unfortunately I cannot talk about due to embargo info. So if you had a question that you asked on Twitter, I very likely saw it, but I could not answer it because of the embargo, so I just didn't bring it up. That way I didn't have to go one way or the other. There's just no way I can actually talk about it because of that. But for now, I think that covers it for our Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition Q&A. So thank you for watching, and if you liked this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, and of course be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Xenoblade Chronicles and other things gaming as well. Until next time, bye.